Let's get started with some breaking news out of the National Football League, where the Dallas Cowboys finally reached an agreement with wide receiver CeeDee Lamb. The news was broken by none other than the ultimate insider himself, the one and only Adam Schefter of ESPN. Lamb gets a 4-year, $136 million deal that includes a $38 million signing bonus, the largest ever given to a wide receiver. The deal also makes Lamb the second highest paid non-quarterback behind Minnesota Vikings wide receiver Justin Jefferson. Joining me live to talk about this is the man who broke the story, the one and only Adam Schefter himself. What's going on, Adam? How are you, sir? How's everything?
Stephen A., nice to see you for a second time today.
Yes, it is. Any surprise at all that the deal got done today?
No, and I say that because when we were talking this morning, we are now under 2 weeks away from the start of the regular season. The Dallas Cowboys play in Cleveland 13 days from now. And you always felt that coming into this week, this would be a week where every team would go to any player that had a significant unresolved issue. And I mean, CeeDee Lamb in Dallas, he had not been in training camp. Jamar Chase in Cincinnati, who just started practicing yesterday in a walkthrough practice. The 49ers with Brandon Ayuk and Trent Williams. The Jets with Haason Reddick. Every significant unresolved situation has to be addressed. It doesn't mean that they're going to be solved or resolved, but we are getting so close to the opener that it's go time for everybody. So you always knew, particularly in this particular situation where the Dallas Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb had been about $1 million a year apart, that somehow, some way they would figure out a way to bridge their differences, get a deal done, get CeeDee Lamb back into the building, and get him ready for the start of the regular season. Dallas had to have him. It knew it had to have him, and that's why the deal gets done now, just under 2 weeks away from the opener.
Adam Schefter, knowing that the deal had to get done, knowing how pivotal he is when Brandon Cooks is your number 2 and a bunch of dudes named Jalen, whose last name most of us can't remember, are your third receivers and beyond for the Dallas Cowboys, knowing what you've got in terms of your situation with the Dallas Cowboys, and that there was only $1 million apart, why in God's name wait for it to take this long if you're Jerry Jones?
It's a great question. Don't have the answer to that, Stephen A. Again, sometimes that's sort of the way that these situations unfortunately work. These deals sometimes don't get done until they really have to. And deadlines spur action in the National Football League. They spur action really all across the world with all types of situations. But this is a situation where eventually somebody's got to give in. Maybe both sides have to give in. And when you're getting this close and the stakes are so high, again, my sense here is that Dallas gave in a little bit here on the average, wisely, to get this deal done, to get it wrapped up, and to ensure that it was getting its number 1 wide receiver back in the fold.
How does that facilitate anything that Dallas needs to do moving forward as it pertains to Dak Prescott or even Micah Parsons?
You know, I don't believe it has any bearing there. Look, they knew that this deal with CeeDee Lamb was going to get done. It was a priority, and it was always going to be a priority. The situations with Dak and Micah are 2 separate situations. And I think Dallas wants to get those deals done. And right now, those deals are difficult to get done. I think this is a deal that if you're talking about who it could potentially impact, the one guy to me would be Jamar Chase. Because here's just one more barometer of another top wide receiver deal. Now, the difference here is that CeeDee Lamb was going into the last year of his deal, and the Dallas Cowboys have been open about the fact that they wanted to get this deal done. With Jamar Chase, he's got 2 years left on his deal, and we've already heard Mike Brown say that he'd rather wait until after the season. But the fact of the matter is it may not be able to work that way. And so we've got one more marker for a top wide receiver, which is what Jamar Chase is. That's $34 million a year. Again, the circumstances surrounding the deal and the player are a little bit different. But if this deal today is going to have any impact on anybody, more so than Dak Prescott, more so than Micah Parsons, to me, it would be Jamar Chase more than anybody.
When you think about Jamar Chase and what he brings to the Cincinnati Bengals, he's a stud wide receiver. We all know this. But when you bring up those 2 years, those 2 years that he has left on this contract. Let's say that he's at the walkthrough, like you said, he's at practice, but he's not necessarily really practicing in terms of being physical or whatever because he doesn't want to endanger himself in his contractual situation. What recourse does he really have, Adam Schefter, if he's got 2 years left on this deal?
Well, it's tough. And the CBA is designed to work against players in these situations. That's why you haven't seen too many players hold out. Now, ultimately, Jamar Chase hasn't talked to reporters since last season ended. So we don't know exactly how prepared he'd be willing to take this. My guess is he would wind up playing. We've heard Chad Ochocinco come out and say he doesn't believe Jamar Chase would step foot on a football field until he has a new deal. That's a decision that only the player can and will make if a deal were not to get done. But here's what I would say, Stephen A. I think both sides are smart enough to be working toward a deal, to resolving the situation, because it's that important, it's that significant, and it's getting that close to the start of the season. So just like CeeDee Lamb's deal gets done today, 13 days in advance, the Bengals' regular season opener against the Patriots is coming up quick. We know that Chase didn't practice until Sunday, and it was just a walkthrough practice. I don't believe he's practiced yet in an 11-on-11 drill, and I'm not so sure that he will be pushed to practice in one of those full-speed 11-on-11 drills until and if he has that new contract. So they're still working through it, but Chase is going about his business in a professional way. He's been quiet about it, hasn't said anything about it. Everybody's been left to speculate on what he's feeling about it. But I'm sure, and this is not speculation, I'm sure he wants to be paid, and he wants to be paid like a top receiver, and it's up to the two sides to figure out how to get it done.
Let me transition to Haason Reddick, because we know what he brought to the table as a Philadelphia Eagle, moved to the New York Jets in April, was anticipating that a new deal would get negotiated and ultimately done. Jets haven't been having that because he hasn't shown up to camp or anything like that. What's his situation, and what do you think he'll end up doing?
That's a tougher one, because there has not been any contract negotiations since really when the trade was made. And he came into the Jets building. He participated in his introductory press conference. He praised the Jets organization. He passed his physical. And it was shortly thereafter that something changed, because I think the Jets traded for him thinking that they would be able to work together and work out a deal in time. And that's not what happened. Basically, the Jets made an initial offer to him shortly after the trade, and that was the final offer that they've made to him, because they believe that for a player who hasn't played for the organization, he should be with them before they're rewarding him. And he believes that before he should step foot into that building now, he should be rewarded. So we have really this game of chicken going on in which nobody wins. Haason Reddick is racking up fines. He's not getting paid. The Jets don't have an elite pass rusher. They could be without him, very likely, for the regular season opener against the 49ers. Nobody wins in that particular situation.
Adam, educate me on this. Edify me. He holds out. He gets fined every single day. They do have the option of giving him that money that they've taken away via fines if they so chose, correct? Or is he stuck losing that money? Is that money gone forever?
That fine money is mandatory. Like, he must pay that fine money. Now, when you're figuring out a solution, he's scheduled to make $14.25. Let's just say they reach agreement on a new deal that pays him, I'm making this up, Stephen A., a $10 million raise at $24 million, right?
Right.
Maybe they say at the last one, hey, we need you to kick in an extra $1 million to cover the fines, or an extra $2 million, or however you want to do it. Like, there are creative ways to go about it. And if you're Haason Reddick and you're banking on that big new deal, and let's call it $24 million a year, a 3-year, $24 million deal, that's 3 years, $72 million. So if you're eating $2 million worth of fines, it's not ideal, but again, it's not the worst case scenario.